Hello second years, welcome to your second issue, which is cultural bias, and your final issue as well. The other ones we look at are now called debates, just because this one is a problem, an issue within psychology, and then the other ones it's a debate between is it nature, is it nurture, is it free will, is it determinism. So you're kind of on a spectrum, whereas this one is just an issue. Hopefully everyone can agree it's just an issue that either previously psychology has or one that we do still continue to have today. Excuse me, and this one is about cultural bias. So let's get started. Right, cultural bias then is the idea that psychology is biased towards a certain culture, or exactly like gender bias leans towards a certain culture. And that again, much like the fact, if you think back to the top 10 psychologists were male, this is the same thing here. So they found that 64% of all psychologists are American psychologists. So that's a huge percentage of American psychologists. So the rest of the other cultures aren't going to have their views heard and represented in psychology, and it's going to become accepted that all the theories are going to be developed from an American slant, and that will be kind of viewed as that it'll be whilst it's on an American slant, it'll be believed that it can be applied to all cultures. And if you think about that as well, that's American psychologists. I bet if we added that in, that factored in all Western psychologists, so Australia, the UK, then that would probably make up a huge amount of psychologists. And if we look at key textbooks in psychology, 94% of the research that we look at is conducted in America, that's mentioned in textbooks. So again, we're very much, not only are there a lot of American psychologists, Western psychologists skewing the theories, but also new psychologists that are coming in are only being exposed to American research, so an American viewpoint as well. So even psychologists from different cultures are already being skewed or biased towards a particular culture, because that's the way that psychology is set up. These are some of the key terms that you need to be aware of. So cultural bias itself would be an examples of cultural bias, exactly like within gender bias, is that we generalise research only based on a certain culture. So a lot of the research that we do is based on Western cultures. The sample is Western, probably majority white as well. And then we generalise the whole of the research. An example here would be, and that's research, and then an example of a theory is Maslow's hierarchy of need. Again, much like psychodynamic approach that we looked at last week with Freud, we will look at the Maslow's hierarchy of needs in full, and then it will make much more sense when we come back to it. But if you remember the basics now, you can fill in. So Maslow's hierarchy of need, and for some of you, you'll already be familiar with this, it's like a pyramid, it's in a pyramid shape. And there are lots of different needs that we have, and once we've fulfilled the basic need, we can move up to the next need, which is slightly more complex, until we can get to the top of the hierarchy, which is self-actualization. So fulfilling who we are, fulfilling our full potential, who we are. So for a lot of you at the moment, that will be to either go into work and start in a particular field, or it will be to go to university to start the process of moving closer to the career that you want to have. So the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs is physical needs such as food, thirst, so water, those kind of things. The next step is safety, so shelter, protection, feeling safe, social acceptance, and so on and so on. So they become slightly more complex with each one, and you get closer and closer to being able to fulfill your needs. So that Maslow's hierarchy is very much focused on what you as an individual need, and at the top particularly it's focused on becoming the best that you individually can be. And there are two types of cultures. There's an individualistic culture, which very much describes a Western, which includes America, kind of view of humans, of cultural view, is the individual, and the kind of the best way to represent that is, say, employee of the month. So it's all about becoming the best that you can be individually and working on yourself. That's the American dream. Part of the American dream, if some of you study that, It's what we're encouraging you to strive for that. So it's not good, it's not bad, it's just it's the type of culture that we live in, where as an individual we need to improve. And the highest kind of accolade, the highest success is becoming the best that you can be. And Maslow's hierarchy fits perfectly with that idea that we move up and improve and then we become the best that we can. Maslow's hierarchy of need is then blanketly applied, but should not be blanketly applied to all cultures, because another type of culture, which generally explains more Eastern cultures, and we'll come back to this in a minute because there is a bit of debate, is the collectivist culture. So the idea, it's not the individual's success, but it is the success of the group as a whole, as a collective. So Maslow's hierarchy of need isn't appropriate because it puts social acceptance as one of the final needs before self-actualization. So it's suggesting there's several other things we need before that, whereas in a collectivist culture where it's a group, the group needs to succeed. There's two issues there. First of all, that social acceptance is one of the last things, whereas actually for people in a collectivist culture it's a really significant thing alongside physical safety or getting food or drink. They're equally as important. So Maslow's hierarchy is affected there. And also right at the top, it's not about becoming the best that you can be as an individual, it's about, have you succeeded with the whole of your group? Is everybody becoming the best that they can be within that group, within that collective? So the example there would be not one individual person wanting to be the employee of the month, but making sure that everybody is fully succeeded and fully protected in the working environment. So that would be an example of cultural bias as a theory, and then I'm sure you can think of hundreds of different pieces of research that are culturally biased as well, probably, or also androcentric. So that we talked about last week, so you can think about that. Ethnocentrism, so cultural bias and ethnocentrism, and cultural relativism, alpha and beta, so everything, and universality, everything written in bold are terms that are mentioned directly on the specification. So you could be asked to define them. It wouldn't be in much detail, but you could be asked, say, probably up to a 4-marker, define ethnocentrism and give examples of it in research that you've studied. So just be comfortable with the definitions. They will be in your book as well if you want to have a look in your book if you're not so sure. So ethnocentrism is the superiority of one's own culture, a little bit like androcentrism, so having that male focus view. Ethnocentrism is having a particular cultural kind of view of everybody's behaviours. So the only difference between andro and ethnocentrism, so androcentrism is male only, male focus, so the word andro means I don't know if it directly means male, but in this context androcentrism means male focused. Ethnocentrism means culturally focused, so it doesn't identify a particular culture, but as you can imagine it's mostly Western cultures because of the number of American psychologists and the amount of American research that's referenced in textbooks as well. Not always, but most of the time. So then within that there's alpha bias, which means exactly the same thing in gender bias as it does in cultural bias, so it's overemphasizing cultural differences and generally kind of holding one, either consciously or unconsciously holding one gender and culture above the other. And a really good example of this would be attachment. So you've got the strange situation, and if you think about the different cultures that you compared, in the culture that had the largest amount of secure attachments was England, was the UK, and then all the other cultures the number of insecure attachments increased almost to the point, I think, and you'll know more looking at this with Andy, but increased beyond a secure attachment. And if you think about it, they are called insecure attachment. So secure attachment is implying that this is the right kind of attachment to have, and in the way it's weighted, British culture, British children, British parents or British carers demonstrated secure attachment most strongly, whereas in other cultures insecure attachment was more strongly focused. And by the wording of it, secure attachments being held up as secure, the healthy one, the right one for a child, and insecure attachments, the two different types of insecure attachment, are by the name of them being considered wrong or different. And actually that's not the case. Wrong, I suppose, because that's not the case. They're just different styles of attachment that are due to different cultures. So alpha bias, secure attachment's the best one, whereas really should be acknowledging that there's differences, and that's all they are. One's not right and one's not wrong. Okay, and you know about that with Germany, and I think it's Japan that you look at as well, and the different insecure attachments. Now would be a perfect opportunity for you to refresh a little bit of your attachment knowledge. ExamU Well, thank you for that. And then we have a piece of research here who supporting the idea that alpha bias isn't always the best way to approach things, because another example that a trap we've already fallen into is the idea of the different cultures: Western cultures, individual, collectivist cultures, Eastern culture as well. And there's a piece of research that was conducted that found that actually there is more difference within individuals within a culture, so more difference between two Western people and two Eastern people than there is between the cultures as a whole. So actually 14 out of the 15 studies didn't find that there was any difference in the culture, in the level of individualism in somebody in a Western culture to someone in an Eastern culture, and that's something that previously we've overemphasised, that difference. Everyone Western individualistic, everyone Eastern collectivist. Beta bias, we're ignoring and minimising those gender differences, and cultural differences, and then applying them to everybody. So IQ is a really, really good example of this, and this is about a beta bias measurement. So IQ tests were developed in the 1920s, around the time that there was a lot of movement of people from other countries into America after the wars, and because of the financial success of America. And they developed IQ tests, and they consistently found when they conducted them that people who'd lived in America, so Western Americans, consistently getting higher IQ scores than maybe a lot of people from Afro-Caribbean people moving from different cultures coming into America were getting much lower IQ scores. So of course that then, and this, as you can already see, is starting to lead towards one of the evaluation points about the negative impact. And then that was like, well, obviously white people are much more intelligent, and when they evaluated this, considered this was not the case. The IQ test was poorly written with cultural bias. So two things. First of all, it's written in the English language, where people moving to America for the first time haven't had an opportunity to be immersed in the language. They're not native speakers of it, so that would affect their score. So that was a significant problem that we're still trying to remove from IQ tests today, the need for a certain level of language understanding. And also they had questions that were very culturally specific, like who advertised a certain type of chocolate. Well, that's nothing to do with how intelligent you are, that's to do with whether you've lived in a country or not. So they applied something blanketly to everybody, and it's the same with definitions of abnormality. So if you think about deviation from social norms that we talk about, and we talk about cultural bias quite a lot, and there are several other examples. So it's the idea that certain cultures believe that their dead ancestors come and speak to them and offer them advice, and of course in the UK that's not believed. So a lot more people, so potentially those people would be considered abnormal under the definitions of abnormality. However, that's not the case. It's because it's just because their culture's different. So again, beta bias, applying the same thing, ignoring cultural differences and applying it to all cultures. And then cultural relativism is the idea that cultural norms and values are culture specific, and no one culture is superior to another culture. So if you think about everything being relative, that means everything needs to be in context. So when you look at it's almost a complete different opposite term to ethnocentrism. So when you look at a culture, you need to look at it, or a person, you need to study them in their appropriate culture and look at the context around them, as opposed to taking them out of their culture and placing them into another culture, or applying our cultural values to their culture as well. And no one culture is superior to another, so with alpha bias. So we need to acknowledge that there are differences, and that things need to be studied in their specific in a cultural specific kind of environment, but also then we need to look at alpha bias and acknowledge that we need to remove alpha bias, saying no one culture is superior to another culture. And again, we strive for in psychology universality, theories that would explain everybody's behaviour but still allow for differences such as culture. And that's it. Unfortunately, I have no examples of that. We do not have many examples, but we are striving towards universality. Okay. Oh, there we go. And also, if you have a look at the world's top 10 universities, they are all Western universities as well. So Harvard is in America, Oxford is in the UK, Cambridge is in the UK, America, UK, Australia, America, Australia, Australia. Okay, so they're all in the Western cultures. So if they are going to teach with a Western slant, which will then obviously continue that cycle of psychology being westernized or being culturally biased, which is then not going to allow other cultures and other universities to kind of engage with that process. A negative impact, once again, is that it increases negative stereotypes. So an issue with gender bias is that it has a very cultural biases. It has a very negative impact. For example, it maintains negative stereotypes, and it links quite strongly with currently there is a rise in a revival of race science, so looking at the differences between races, which consistently has been debunked as a theory. It's not an effective theory to kind of look at certain differences, particularly things like IQ, and that's very, very relevant at the moment with the rise of the alt-right in America, and the increase of membership to the Ku Klux Klan, all of these very sort of negative things that are happening. And The Guardian has a really, really fascinating article on that as well, and that's all linked to, there's been lots and lots of alt-right policies that have been put forward based on the erroneous, the incorrect, the false, the poorly conducted science, which suggests that certain cultures and certain races are less intelligent than white races, which is all based on poor science. So as you can imagine, that allows for discrimination to continue. It would make people feel quite uncomfortable about psychology, putting them off coming in. Therefore, we continue to get quite a skewed and culturally biased group of people studying psychology, reducing the validity of psychology and moving us further away from that desire to be able to develop universal theories or be universal science as well. Really fascinating article I'd recommend that you look at. So N for negative impact, R for research, although I've called it flawed research, but the basic idea is the same. So one of the problems with cultural bias is that it leads to very, very flawed or poorly conducted research. For example, there's huge issues with sampling. You're 4,000 times more likely to be selected for a sample if you are male, white, and a college or university student, if we use the UK term. So that's an exceptionally skewed sample. So we're churning out these theories and claiming we can apply them to everybody, beta bias, but actually they're very culturally biased. They don't consider culture. And also we develop very bias, and that poorly conducted research leads to very biased theories such as Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Also, a lot of conformity research was originally very much based on Western cultures, and actually the way that people conform is very different across lots of different cultures based on their lots of different things, including their kind of the political leaning previous history of their countries, which some of you will be much more comfortable with having looked at history and different things, but if you think about the types of countries that were previously communist as well, and they would have a different level of conformity and for a different reason and a different style. So those theories are very, very biased because we have issues with sampling. We don't explore lots of different types of cultures and races. Okay. The next thing the thing that we do have though that's a strength, a positive, is that we are work by acknowledging cultural bias. So there's nothing good about cultural bias, but if we acknowledge that cultural bias exists, then we can reduce that cultural bias. And much like feminist psychology was developed in response to gender bias within psychology, indigenous psychologies was developed to deal with the issue of cultural bias in psychology. So that is the idea of, instead of Afrocentrism, so acknowledging the fact that actually every single human has their roots in Africa. Because of evolution, human life evolved. It became the first humans evolved from the Sahara Sahara deserts. So actually applying European values to most people, but particularly people who continue to live in a culture that isn't a European culture, is very, very inappropriate. So they want to redress that balance and encourage you to kind of bear in mind the roots of human existence and where it came from, but also as a whole consider that you need to approach things in a culturally relative manner. So you need to study people in their native, their original culture, which is really valuable as well. And of course, if we do that, we're opening up more areas of psychology, we're improving the research, we're improving the theories, and therefore improving the validity of psychology. We can be more confident of the theories we develop because they are more universal and more effective. Okay. Don't worry about those points underneath. If you want to have a look in the pink-haired girl or the dog book, there is some information in there, but I'd say those 3 points are the most appropriate ones that you need. Okay, thank you.